A very good morning, my lovely friends. Um, Myself, Dr. Deepak Singh from Raw. Today, again, on my writings, I will just going to discuss my bloggings and writings, a new type of poetry that I have written few days earlier, and I will try to bring some analysis on that. To bring on an approach of understanding in a poetic form. Before, let me make it clear something about poetry, or what actually the nature, or what actually a poet or poetry is. My friend, poetry or writing poetry is obviously, in a very literal term, could be said that it is a raw. It is raw. You know what is raw is. What is raw? So it is raw. It is beyond. It is not in any sense decimated. It has to be taken on to be the next taxi of understanding and delicacies of knowing that how knowledge is means fished on, or how knowledge to be bring on into an abundant effect of imagination. What are the way imagination could be curved out in a form of writing on with the delicacy or the blending of words. That is poetry. And obviously, a poetry, to get enjoyed by a poetry, you also require an aesthetic cognitive core in your own mind, where the abstract realm can enjoy the beyond coordinates in such a way that it comes to the form of unique art. So, on this sense, I just trying to bring on another poetry, very very nice poetry indeed. Obviously, you'd be enjoying, and you are enjoying by different scores of avenue. Just you are going on through into the medium of writing and blogging of mine. Anyway, just I'm trying to bring it out the appropriate approach of writing. My friend, the poetry is about virtues of vectors. The topic of the poetry is the virtue of vectors. Now, virtue. What is virtue? Virtue is something to be embarked on, or to be understood on, to be in a very good form. It's a very good literal code that is taken into form. That means it has got a very good understanding. Virtues is in what could be, if I just convert into a vernacular term, that is in Hindi, what could be said in our regional language, mother language is in Hindi, that virtue is spoken as sadachar. So, and what is vector? Obviously, what is a vector? Very unique. I don't think that vector in literature has got an abundant approach so far in the literature continuum, so what has been made on so far. The beauty of vectors, the beauty of vectors means the beauty of the resultant that is happening. What is vector? Vector is what that is happens. What is the components, the action and the resultant. That is the vector that happens, or it could be taken any holy sense even. So by that way, the topic of the poetry is the virtues of vector, and it is obviously a poetry. That means you need to keep it on a unique uh, way of understanding in different methods to bring it into the approach of understanding that how the vectors is analyzed, or how you are going to bring on the subjectivity of understanding in different realm. So to get an assess of the facts, or to get a total coherence of the facts of knowing, let us discuss, or let us come into the union of understanding that how the vectors brings out the virtues. Now the first four line as is set on this way: the metaphor of thought's curvature. The thought's curvature, my friend, the thoughts, we all have our thoughts, we are all cornered by our thoughts, but to explore the consciousness of thinking flux, it's a unique way of understanding. We think, but what think is a matter, is a matter, it's a flux, it's the inertia. What it is? It's a vector. It's happening. It happens. It's the resultant components of the derivatives of our neuronal conservation that is acting on in our brain. So by that we garner out, by that way we make out the metaphor. That is in a literature term, metaphor. That means we bring out a unique form of understanding, unique form of literature codes sketched out in linear form. So the metaphor of thought's curvature that imbibes the institute of mind. The mind gets instituted. It is completely under the institution of the vectors that is been correlated in the collinear coordinates of what the perceptual log enhance it with the summation of our mind coherence resultant, that out to the vectors that induct the literature and wonderful sign, and that brings out the literature, that brings out our feelings, that brings out our terms of known, or that brings out the moments of being, that we are being, that literature, we are the being form, that brings out that analysis of understanding by that coherence of vectors that acting on through our brain or through our vertebra, and by the impedance of our mind vectors acting together in correlation, in coordinates. The matrix to fetch the medial, the lateral and art fine. So obviously matrix is everywhere in our brain. The components, though it is very, very, very in micro scale, the volts, there in a very micro scale, but they are all in a neuronal architecture acting in matrix to give and provide an impedance to our brain. And by that way, the art fine, that art sign, they ought to come out to be in a shine in the form of expression of our own motive, of our own being, of our own existence, of our own personality, of our own traits. What are the different methodology, or how would it react on, or would it form on? And then obviously how we will just dimmer out, how we would bring on a regulation, that how much would be the adjective maybe, with the adjective of loading the buoyancy of thoughts, grids and the contours line. That means with that regulation of feelings, that regulation of expression that is form on, that submits to the contours line. That is, means the what is means surrounded, but we are surrounded by the coordinates of our sketch, the oral phenomena that we are being surrounded on. Obviously, the layers, the cosmos contours, and even our mind contours, and even the skylark, the airlock, they're all are in their form of mathematical modeling, acting in a very precise manner, giving us a very streamlined activity, very streamlined flow that we are moving on in the dynamics, or could be said modified. We have known that modified Newtonian dynamics, so that brings out the modified dynamics of space-time continuum. These are the virtues of vectors. The vectors act on, that happening on. We are all happening. We are all in the form of happening. In this happening, we evolve ourselves. We dominate ourselves. We dominate our genes. We dominate and we give up our recessive factors, and we dominate by our innate approach in our capabilities. We leap up. We derive our own skills. We bring advantage of our skills. We bring on the actions of our skills in more integrated or more exponent form, more better, more fine. It's more fine to be informed, and finest to bring it into the wonderful way of expression. These are the virtues of vectors indeed. And then in this way, the first 4 lines of virtues of vectors, and the other 4 lines are the metaphysics of frequency. So obviously, in the metaphysics, that means that which is an abstract correlation. The abstract realm, and it has got on a wave frequency acting on. We are all waves. We are all waves. We are all waves. We are all waves of our mind continuum. But we cannot make it out that detection, as we are all in our same frequency range. But we cannot even grow or gyrate up to that mind frequency range to enable ourselves to be understood with the mind continuum, but we can assess the coherence of that assessment of understanding that we mean to be in existence. So that is the metaphysics of frequency, that linear the programming with wonderful. That is the coherence topography adjectives, the determinants school. And all the determinants acting, all the mathematics, square mathematics, acting in precise manner, all the neurons and the synapses, gaps, all the neurotransmitters, searchers and everything, all the bodily symptoms are totally integrated in a very unique form of virtues of vectors acting on, and they are all silent. Cool here mean to say that they are all acting on, working on in silence, in cool, in a very mind silent, and just exploring on the minds. The calculus of event horizon and the distinction codes of integration of way-to-west sectors do induce intelligence binary code. And thus the event horizon, here event horizon is expressed as to be thinking beyond, to go on a beyond way of understanding the abstract. So in that way we just bring on an intelligence code. Obviously I've just said about the binary code that acts on. They are all raw. In poetic terms, with the information that exponents the mind depth to beyond the virtues. So these virtues goes beyond. That means it is in evolution. It continues to be in evolution form. Each and every day, each and every moment, each and every sector of space and time, we are on the verge of dominance. We are on the verge of evolution, acting just like a step, one step, two step, third step, fourth step, fifth step, just like a step. We are moving, exploring ourselves, we are moving ourselves, we are streamlined, flowing ourselves in the space-time waves, in all the abstract and linear sketch that is acting on. And by that, we have got distinction codes to be acting on. Different codes, different way of expression. We have different modes of expression. We sometimes we very happy, we sometimes we are very grateful, sometimes we are very pause, sometimes we are very different ways of expression. Just means imbibed on, comes on. And with this all information, with the information that the last line as it is said, with the information, the exponents the mind depth to beyond in virtues. And this way, we can drill, we can bring out the core of our mind more, in more depth, to abundance factor of art use. And by that way, we can bring out our abundance vector there acting to be in action of knowing our own self or knowing our own truth. So that was the poetry, my friend, Virtues of Vectors. I think you would liked, you have read earlier, but I just give on an explanation on the virtues of vector, and you would be liking more. I hope a very good day ahead. Thank you very much.